in today's video I'm going to be working on the restoration of the windows for my doll's house. As you can see, the doll's house currently has one plastic window and then these ones here that are a little bit broken. So this top one's got a bit missing here, and if I go to the bottom as well, you can see the whole bottom panel of it is missing. It's got a bit of blue paint on it, so they need some restoration, and I plan on turning them into Tudor windows. If I open up here, you can see as well everything's blue, and on the inside that needs restoring as well. So I want to also work on the door in this video. So I want to get the blue paint off it and turn it into a more Tudorish door. So first of all, I have taken the windows out of the doll's house. I've done this by prising them out with a screwdriver. They were glued in and I have done a little bit of damage there, but I'll make sure that I fix that too. It was the hardest bit to get the top ones out because they had the window sills as well. And this is what the house looks like without its bottom windows. It looks really odd without any windows in it, but hopefully it'll look better when I've finished. So now that I've got the windows out, I've had a better look at them, and I didn't realise before that they're plastic. I thought that they were wooden that had been painted with some gloss, but they are plastic and they've got the glue stuck to them, and some of them have got blue paint stuck to them. So I'm going to take them outside and give them a good sand down before I do anything else. So I'm just actually going to flip my camera around in a second to show you what's happening behind the scenes. So this was on the other side of the camera. She was having a lovely time in the sunshine. She always likes to be involved in looking at what's going on. So I'm just giving these a sand to try and get some of this blue paint off, and also to get some of the dried glue off. I want to try and reuse these frames. I want to try and reuse as much as possible because I don't really want things going in the bin. If I'm not using things, then I will give them to charity. So I've been looking at some pictures of Tudor houses because I want to try and make my windows look realistic for the era. And when I've been looking at the shape of the windows, I've noticed that quite a lot of them are long and narrow. So I'm going to take some of these sections out so that I can have 3 windows within this frame. Now, as you can see, I'm using a little craft knife here. As I always say, please don't copy how I'm doing this. This isn't me giving advice on how to use knives. All I'm going to say is that blades are obviously sharp, don't let children use them, etc, etc. So I'm just showing you what I did, not how to do it. Now, we knew that some of my windows were broken, so obviously parts have fallen out as I've cut them. So here I'm just gluing those bits back together to try and make the structure that I want to build upon. For these bigger windows from the bottom of the doll's house, one of them was missing the chunk of panes at the bottom, so what I'm going to do is make sure that both of them look the same, making those 3 long windows at the top of it and then having a completely empty space at the bottom where I'll maybe put a different design of leading in. Now, to make my leading, I've actually found this, which is gutter mesh guard roll from Wilkinson's, and it's a plasticky sort of netting, and when I saw it I thought that the diamond shapes were exactly the size and shape that I wanted for my leading. Now, it is completely black, so it's the wrong colour for my leading, but I thought I'd buy it and give it a go to see if it would work inside the window frames. So I've started by cutting it out to the size a little bit bigger than what I need to go into my window frames, and then after that I have then daubed some paint onto it to try and give it a mottled, more silvery look. So whilst waiting for that leading to dry, I've started on the next step. So I've added some yellow ochre paint there to a bowl with some powdered polyfiller and some water, and then I've given it a really good mix up because what I want to do is try and make stonework around my window frames. So rather than having wooden window frames, I'm going to build onto the plastic ones that I already had and try and make a stone effect that the leading will then sit inside. So I'm just mixing in some colours of paint here. I actually settled on the best colour of stonework being just the yellow ochre, mixed with water and then mixed with the polyfiller. I've mixed up the polyfiller so that it's quite a thick consistency. This is the same powdered polyfiller that I used when I was doing my brickwork, which you can watch in a different video. I'll pop a link on at the top there. Okay, now what I did was I made up the thick consistency and then I popped it onto the window frames. So I built it up and around. This little window frame here actually isn't one that existed. I just quickly made this out of some wooden kebab skewers because I had that one little acetate window that didn't have a window frame and I needed to make one for this. So I've just cut out some wooden kebab sticks to make the frame. It actually fell to bits there, but I've glued it back together since. So I built up the polyfiller around it until I had the frame completely covered, and then with a palette knife I started to shape the polyfiller into the shape of the stonework that I wanted. Once I was roughly happy with the shape of the stonework of the windows, and once the leading was dry, so once the silver paint was dry that was on the leading, I slotted them into the wet polyfiller and pushed them in, and then I put a little layer of polyfiller over the top to trap the plastic mesh inside, and then I heated it gently with a hairdryer, which just helped it to sink into position to take away the natural curve from when it was in its packaging. Once the polyfiller was dry, really carefully with the craft knife, I sort of carved away from me, being careful not to go anywhere near my fingers, and tried to make the final shape of the stonework, which looked like this. You'll notice that the two windows at the bottom have crumbled a little bit. That's because I put 2 coats of polyfiller on and it didn't like that. So that's a bit of advice. Only use 1 layer of polyfiller. Don't let it dry a little bit and then add more. Once the windows were dry, I wasn't sure whether to add a bit of ageing to them or not, but the rest of the house does have some ageing in it now, so I decided to do this, and I also asked for some advice as well from people who were subscribing and people on my Instagram. To add the ageing, I used soft pastels, and I found that the best technique was to put it on my fingers first and then rub in, rather than going straight onto the windows with the pastels. Once that was done, I then turned the doll's house onto its side so that gravity would help me out, and glued them down. I just used the super glue that I've been using for a lot of other parts of my doll's house. At first I decided to apply the glue neatly around the windows like this, and then drop the window frames onto this glue. I did this because there's not much of the actual frames that touches the wood, so I was worried about it not adhering to the glue. However, this did result, as you can see, in a line of glue down the side on the frame. So for the other windows, I decided to apply the glue directly to the frames and had to do it right at the edge to make sure that that did stick to the frames, and this was a much neater way of doing it. I left the doll's house on its side overnight to give the windows a good chance to dry. During this time, the cat took the opportunity to pinch the space where the doll's house lives to make her own little bed, so she was very happy that she got that chance to sit on these blankets. And when it was dry, we flipped it back over, and this is what it looks like. So I'm not quite sure about the ageing on the windows, but actually I'm really happy with the overall look. I can't believe how much progress I've made with this doll's house from the start to finish, and there's still lots more to do on the inside. But thank you so much to everybody that's been watching the progress and the journey of my doll's house. If you haven't watched the other videos, please do go back and have a look, and remember to hit subscribe. Thank you for watching.